I couldn't take the 2 years of abstinence and forced Alice the other day. Since then, Alice has been crying and won't talk to me. I'm 37 years old and Alice is 35. We have 2 daughters, one in 8th grade and one in 6th grade. After we had children, Alice was quite active, but 6 months ago, she suddenly started refusing to have sex with me. We tried to talk about it many times, but Alice would simply repeat that she didn't want to. Not that it was particularly my fault or anything. I once suspected that she was cheating on me, but there was nothing suspicious about Alice except for her wrestling, and although I excluded her cell phone and notebook, I could find no evidence of cheating. Then, one night, we tried to discuss things as usual, but Alice's attitude remained the same, and in frustration, I finally forced myself on her. She was so shocked that she kept crying and wouldn't talk to me. I immediately regretted it, explained my feelings, and apologized many times, but my words didn't seem to reach Alice, and she stopped making meals for me. I spent my days worrying that if I didn't do something, she would leave the house. One Friday night, I came home and Alice was not there. She did not come home at night, and I contacted her workplace and her friends to look for her, but they didn't know where she was. Her coworker who answered the phone said, "I heard you are always abusing her. It's not good because your wife says she's going to divorce you," is what I was told. I said it was a misunderstanding and hung up. If what I did can be called domestic violence, then it is true. But we had tried to discuss it many times, and I don't do it all the time. The fact that the person who happened to answer the phone said that must mean that Alice is going around saying that I usually do that kind of thing. I was shocked by that, but I can't just think about myself. My daughters were also anxious when they noticed that Alice was not home. To reassure them, I told them that Mom is out with her friends. I also told them that Daddy would cook dinner today, and I did so and watched them do their homework. I'm not as good a cook as Alice, but I used to live alone, so I can cook simple things. The girls were happy to eat the curry I made. In the end, Alice came home at 3 a.m. I saw a car stop at the front door, and Alice got out of the passenger seat. I hurried out, and the car sped off, so I only caught a glimpse, but it was clearly a man. I questioned Alice, who came into the house like it was nothing. "I was just asking for advice. I have nothing to hide," she said firmly, but she seemed to be in a hurry and wouldn't make eye contact with me. It was late that day, so I let Alice go to bed, and we had another discussion the next night. Then she became somewhat frightened, no longer in the strong state she had been in the day before. She had told someone at her workplace that she was getting a divorce, but now she said that she did not want to. In addition, she apologized for abstaining. She said she was sorry for rejecting me and that she would make an effort from now on, so please don't force things. I didn't know what to do anymore. "When did you tell your coworker you were getting a divorce?" I asked. She was worried that I looked pale, so I told her that we had a bit of a fight and that the conversation got out of hand. "I'm sorry, I'll make things right on Monday," she said. For what it's worth, her attitude was clearly different from the day before. I apologized for confronting her, told her I did not want to divorce her, and that I would respect her wishes as much as possible. But inwardly, I was completely suspicious of Alice. The man was most certainly her affair partner. She was probably abstaining because she had completely moved on to that man, and maybe she met with him that day and complained that I had been bad to her, that she was divorcing me and wanted to remarry. Alice had a lot of baggage, so I think she was planning to just not come back if he ever took her in, but the man refused, so she had no choice but to come back and reconcile with me. I guess she changed her attitude because she didn't want to get divorced as well. I could have guessed that much, but on top of forcing her, I didn't have any proof, which is a disadvantage, so I decided to gather evidence. I looked at her cell phone and notebook before and found nothing, so I probably wouldn't be able to count on them. I thought about checking Alice's computer and then asking her coworkers. I thought I should avoid her friends because they would probably take Alice's side, but if they were the kind of people who think that I was committing domestic violence, they might say something nasty. The next day, the girls asked me to take them shopping. Alice was reluctant because she wanted to go do her chores, but our eldest daughter said her mother didn't have to come, and the 3 of us went. While shopping, she suddenly asked, "Is Mom having an affair?" she said. My eldest daughter told me that when I'm not home, Alice often makes long phone calls. I don't know if it was because they are of the same gender and therefore more sensitive to such things, or if it was just because they are children, but it seemed that she was very angry that her mom had not come home without saying anything to them, and that was the reason she had told Alice not to come over when we went out. When we got home, the girls went to the living room, bringing out what they had bought and talking happily. Alice was cooking dinner. "How long are you going to keep playing? You've been playing for hours, so why don't you at least help out?" When Alice scolded Leslie, our eldest daughter suddenly snapped. "Mom, you're cheating on Dad, aren't you? Did you think we wouldn't notice that you often hide and make long phone calls?" And while neither Alice nor I could say anything, the eldest daughter continued. "You weren't really going to come home yesterday, were you? If you left without telling us, it means you're leaving us behind too, right? If you get divorced, I'm going to follow Dad. I don't want to be with a mom who chooses to be with another man over her family." Leslie and our second daughter, who were crying and screaming, were glaring at Alice. Alice got down on her knees and sobbed. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything. I didn't want to worry you," she said. Then she also said, "I didn't mean to leave you. I was just going to talk to my friend and leave right away, but we talked too much and it got late. Those long phone calls were also with a female friend. I never cheated on your dad. Please believe me. Nothing is more important than family." She swore these things to us. The girls went to their room without saying a word. They didn't want to eat the food Alice had prepared, so I bought them some meals, and when I came back, Alice had locked herself in her bedroom. I coaxed the girls, who were worried about me, back to their rooms and resumed my discussion with Alice. If she had nothing to hide, she would have told us the identity of the person who sent her home. She was stubborn and refused to go any further, saying that it was a business partner of her company and that it would cause trouble for them. I confiscated her phone and checked it, but still nothing was suspicious. It said that she was getting calls at home, but the incoming call log had been erased. But I'm the one who's registered on our phone bill, so I can see the call history if I can get it. Besides, I am going to Alice's workplace tomorrow. When I told her this, Alice finally gave up and confessed. She told me that she had been dating a guy for the past 2 years, which was right around the time when she had started to abstain from having sex with me. I had suspected it many times, so I felt some closure, but I was also more shocked than I thought I should have been, even though I should have been prepared for it. She had even recorded it, so I heard the details of where they did it and how many times, but it drove me crazy. As I had predicted, the reason of her abstinence was because she was manipulating the guy, which meant that Alice was serious. The day she came home in the middle of the night, she told me she had broken up with him, but it seemed he had dumped her. I told Alice to tell me everything honestly, and I was able to get the man's name and address and all that. Apparently, the man was married and had no children. I feel really bad that I had forced her, and maybe I was not attractive enough for her to change her mind about him, but I couldn't forgive Alice for abandoning not only me, but also our daughters for another man. The next day, I went to work as usual and talked to my boss about this. He was sympathetic and agreed to let me take some time off with pay to take care of my daughters. I decided to move my daughters to my parents' house. They are in the same school district, so they can go to school. However, my eldest daughter seems to be very mentally exhausted, so I told her to take it easy and take a break if she wanted to. I told my parents that Alice might be having an affair, and that they had had an argument, and asked them to take care of my daughters. I went to my parents' house as much as I could and tried to be actively involved in taking care of my daughters. I told my daughters the whole story, except for the graphic parts, but I told them that I was just upset that I had found out about Alice's attempt to leave her daughters. I stayed home that day to also monitor Alice, and visited the man's office the next day, but the man was not at work. I talked to the man's boss, and he said that he had been absent without leave, and that he must have known I was coming and ran away. But that made the man's boss believe my story completely, so I was saved in the end. When I got home, I questioned Alice. I questioned her because I could only assume that the man's behavior had been brought to Alice's attention. There was no way he was using the house phone because he knew I could log the calls. The cell phone was still being monitored, so he still should not have been able to contact her. If that happens, then she would have had another cell phone. Alice still pretended not to know, but when I checked, I quickly found the phone. It was a very thin and small one, and I didn't notice that she had it on her person. She contacted him even though she had said she didn't want to get divorced in this situation. She said she only responded to him because he had contacted her, but she had no remorse at all when she kept the hidden phone and even said, "I'm sorry, forgive me, you're the only one for me." I was more disgusted than angry and decided to get a divorce as soon as possible. After that, I hired a lawyer and we had a discussion. I asked the man for $5 million in alimony, which he agreed to. Apparently, he was counting on their savings, which Alice secured and did not give him, so he ended up resigning from the company and decided to use his severance pay to cover the alimony. The company could have fired him for having an affair while on duty and for being absent without notice, but they made into personal reasons, which was honestly very helpful. The company immediately transferred the fee to me, and that was the end of it for the man. Next, I had a meeting with Alice. The big issue was custody. Alice wanted custody of both our children, but Leslie had a strong dislike for Alice and refused to go with her. She wanted at least the second daughter, but she also said she wanted to be with her sister, so in the end, Alice gave up. Alice's claim for alimony was not substantial. However, to hold Alice responsible, it was decided to divide the property and use that as alimony. Since child support is the right of our daughters, I decided to demand it and let Alice continue her part-time job. I didn't care anymore, but Alice said she would correct and apologize to me for the incident that I had told her that she was committing domestic violence. So I decided to let her do whatever she wanted. We agreed that I would always be present during visits between the girls and Alice. Leslie said she never wants to see her again, but our younger daughter doesn't hate her mother as much as her older sister does, so I decided it would be a bad idea to separate them completely. The divorce was finalized and Alice became my ex-wife. Alice rented an apartment and moved out of the house. She had to move close to our home in order to continue working at her part-time job, so she had no choice. Alice said she would try her best to reconcile things with me, but I had no desire to do so. My daughters moved back home, and the three of us started living together. I am thinking of moving out when things settle down because it reminds me of that painful memory, but I think my first priority is to get my life settled. I returned to work, but my boss arranged for me to work shorter hours for a while. My coworkers have been supportive, and I am very happy to work for a good company. Thanks to the shorter hours, I am able to cook dinner, and my daughters are willing to help me. My older daughter does the laundry, and my youngest daughter does the cleaning. I think the shock of being betrayed by Alice for 2 years is still lingering a little, and sometimes I have trouble sleeping. I am worried about the effect on my daughters, so I try to stay with them as much as possible and consider counseling if necessary. The other day, I heard that Alice quit her job and went back to her parents' house, which is a plane ride away. Rumors of her affair and divorce at her part-time job had caused her so much stress that she repeatedly had a stroke while at work, making it impossible for her to work. She informed me that she will definitely pay child support, but she will not be able to visit her daughters for the foreseeable future. I told my daughters that Alice had moved back to her parents' house, but they just said, They seemed to have gone beyond anger to indifference. It is very hard for a mother to be abandoned by her daughters, but I guess that is the price to pay for cheating. I am going to continue to work hard and live life together with my daughters. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing you again. Please subscribe to our channel.